We are live.
Meeting to order of the August meeting of the Redevelopment Commission. John, you want to take roll?
I will do that. Joe Plankus,
Here.
Jill Doyle.
Here.
Doug Holtz.
Here.
Bob Beaudry. Bob Beaudry. Linda Noss.
Here.
Jimmy Cox. Jimmy Cox. Okay. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you, John. So noted. First item on the agenda is the approval of our July 19th, 2021 minutes. Do we have any comments or corrections or changes from the commission members?
I have a small correction. On the second page where it states Linda Nass stated that, I think it should say, since 2018, that an annual report on the taxing units is to be provided. It isn't by ordinance, it wasn't ordinance we passed, it's by Indiana State Code. So I thought we should correct that for the record.
Okay.
So if it would say, Linda Nass stated that since 2018, an annual report on the taxing units be provided, and maybe in parentheses put Indiana State Code. We're scratching the part where it says,
Okay.
through an ordinance that was passed. Okay, that's all.
Okay, we can make that correction, and why don't you submit it again for consideration next month, John?
Yeah, I'll pass that along to the clerk's office.
Yep,
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Let the record show that Bob Beaudry arrived at 6:01. Okay, next item on the agenda is approval of claims. Do we have any questions or comments from the commissioners regarding the claims this month?
Did you note for the record? Okay, he did, okay.
Yes. Okay, if I see no comments or questions, do I have a motion for approval of claims?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion from Jill Doyle. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Doug Holtz, second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 We have, motion passes 5-0. Okay, next item on the agenda is a public hearing regarding Resolution 01-2021 and 03-2021. I'm going to turn it over to Catherine first, and she can explain exactly what the resolution consists of.
All right, thank you. Catherine Finello with the Law Office of Dinsmore and Scholl. Tonight you're holding a public hearing basically on the contents of the amending declaratory resolution. If you remember, back in 2019, the Redevelopment Commission created the Union Square allocation area. We amended the resolution in February of this year to add 4 parcels and called it the expansion area, and updated the project and included a project amendment in with the amending declaratory resolution. So tonight, if there are any interested persons from the public to hear or to remonstrate, or if anybody filed remonstrances prior to the hearing, you'll take those into consideration and review again the public utility and benefit of the proposed projects by Mr. Moffitt. And then once the public hearing is closed, you will consider the confirmatory resolution as required under law. And you have the option to confirm, modify and confirm, or rescind the resolution. It is called a modifying and confirming resolution because we had one slight change after discussion with Jim Treat. Other than that, there are no other changes to the amending that was adopted in February.
Okay, thank you very much, Catherine. Justin, if you would, speak to the budget.
Yes. Good evening, Justin Moffitt with Old Town Companies. I just wanted to maybe give a high-level explanation of the project and how we landed with this expanded area. We have a presentation here, and we'll scroll through. Oh, thank you. Appreciate it. I think everyone's generally familiar with the original Union Square project, and the original TIF allocation area was what's in Technicolor here, State Road 32 at the top of the page, the Grand Junction Plaza area, kind of just below the project. That went through full council, PUD approval, and then TIF approval as well for the allocation area and for the terms of the TIF proposal. This is kind of updated massing when we brought the project back through early this year. This is not final architecture. We call it massing at this point. It's the scale of the structure. Still working through the detail of the architectural planning. But we have mixed-use multifamily structure top left that would house a parking garage, main level retail, multifamily residential on the upper floors. To the right of that, there's a structure we're calling the Union. That's kind of a modern-looking architecture there, still in debate on whether or not that's appropriate, but really the massing is what's important, and that would be a food and beverage concept, kind of a community gathering spot. And then to the right, you'll see this expanded allocation area that we're discussing tonight. So we have the top left, the original site, and then this expanded area. And I thought it might be helpful just to give you a little background of how this came to be. As we started looking at ways to provide public parking in the development area, even after our initial approval in 2019, the subject of available public parking kept coming up from, I would say, all sides of the conversation. Those pro-development, those against development, everybody was kind of in agreement on the subject that we could use some additional parking in downtown Westfield. And so we were looking for strategies to expand parking. So we looked at the idea of public garage within our original site and potentially some surface parking. And it came to our attention that this approximately 5 acres to the east of Union Street, north of Midland Trail, was available. And the reason no one's pursued developing the property is it had some floodplain issues. So we started doing a little reconnaissance on our end, and this is the flood map as we know it today. And this, if you pay attention to engineering too long, you kind of learn how mapping's done. And this was a really curious way to flood map here, because there's a bubble there at Cherry Street. And it didn't take my team too long to figure out that that was purely caused by a choke point at Cherry Street. It's an undersized bridge structure. So we approached city leadership and said, what would you think about expanding the Union Square area? And the city was receptive to it. Had conversations with mayor's office and council members. And we put the property under contract with the owner and invested quite a bit of money in the early research. We invested $50,000 in engineering work before we even knew this was possible. We were going on our career experience and understanding flood modeling. But bottom line was, we knew that in order for this downtown area to be redeveloped, and with the plans for the Jersey Street expansion, that Cherry Street would have to get addressed in the next few years either way. So we had our consultants do some modeling, and it proved that if the Cherry Street bridge impediment is removed, then the floodplain shrinks quite a bit. So we've been working with Army Corps for a better part of a year on this. We kind of start with top-down approach. Army Corps has to approve all flood mapping changes. So this is really what we've done to date. Our team did all the field survey work and the kind of confirmation of the FEMA flood elevations. We delineated both the waters of the U.S. and the wetlands that were adjacent to the site. Army Corps' first feedback was we needed to provide hydraulic modeling of the whole Anna Kendall drain, and that was a substantial feat. We had to gather data from all the city projects along that drainage way and our proposed improvements to dump them into this model so Army Corps would be satisfied. So we have uploaded everything to Army Corps through their HECRAS software, and so we'll get a confirmation that we're good, but it's an objective process. It's if you approve the data, you get your map changed, and so that's the process that we've gone through this year. So we've been coordinating with the city engineer to incorporate our model with his, and to confirm that it's the improved changes to the Cherry Street Bridge will be part of the city planning. That was subsequently memorialized when we had the city council approve our term sheet for the expanded allocation area and the rezone for the expanded Union Square project. It was addressed in that term sheet with the council that the Cherry Street Bridge would be part of the improvement. So that's a city improvement that has been planned. We had to obtain an access easement from adjacent neighbors. We had to do some improvements on their property to that drainage way, so that's been done. And then kind of final step is we've been working with County Surveyor's Office from the beginning on the original Union Square project. Our attorney's been going back and forth on an encapsulation agreement to encapsulate the drain that runs through our site. They're actually meeting this Wednesday to finalize that on the terms of that agreement. And then we're gonna give them an update, so they're aware of what we've done, but give them an update on what we've been able to accomplish through Army Corps. So ultimately, 872 is the magic number. And so that's what we had to prove that we could get to in our flood modeling. And you'll see that our site plan is designed around that magic line on paper. So when we sought a rezone that went through the full APC process and council process and was approved early this summer, it was based on this concept site plan. So we've modeled the buildings around the flood data. And so it's allowed to have the surface parking in a floodplain. We try to keep structures out of the 100-year flood. It's doable, but it just creates other issues and challenges. So that's really what drove our site planning. So my team's really done a lot of work behind the scenes the last 2 years to bring this to the forefront for approval here. So just a few notes that are relevant as we went through the council and APC process. In development planning, we talked about context sensitivity and scaling down densities as we move away from the most dense part of the core. So as we get towards the trail, we committed to no more than 4 stories maximum height. That was a request by, I believe, some council members or APC members, but that was a commitment we made in the PUD text. In this building here, this is not final. This is just a concept image to show massing, but that shows what a 4-story structure would look like along Union Street. In the bottom right image is what exists there today. So not sure everybody likes the architecture of what we're considering, but I think we'd all agree that it's an improvement to what's there today. The other thing that we agreed to was a sunset clause in the PUD. There's some concern over that, just these perpetual PUDs out there. I understand from the developer side, when you invest so heavily in your approvals, you want to make sure you have plenty of runway, but we felt like 5 years was appropriate for us. We think it'll happen far sooner than that based on our current planning. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much, Justin. Good summary. Questions for Catherine well, let's go to public hearing first, and then we will open up for questions from commission members. We'll open up the public meeting at 6:13. Do we have anything from planning department in regards to any emails we've received?
No, I'm sorry. I checked with Rachel, right, just 2 minutes ago.
Okay.
No comments so far.
Okay, nothing from, okay, anyone from the public that would like to speak in regards to this activity? Okay, well, seeing none, we'll close the meeting at 6:14. Commission members, questions for Catherine or Justin? Yeah, go
I
ahead.
have a question on encapsulation. You mentioned it. Okay, are we talking about the drain through the properties south of 32, or are we also talking about east of Union Street, encapsulating that drain?
Could you pull that image back up?
I'm not sure if the pictures really showed it, so I'm asking.
Sure. Well, I'll just tell you verbally, just because it's pretty simple. There's the existing ditch that runs through the original Union Square site, the open ditch there.
Yes.
That will be encapsulated. And so that's what we've been working with the County Surveyor's Office on. We've also been coordinating with how it ties in at the park to the south and to State Road 32 to the north. The legal drain as it continues east through the expansion site, that will not be encapsulated. We've actually been in conversation with the APC about how we protect that tree line along the creek and turn it into potentially a pedestrian trail that winds through the site. So that will stay as is.
Okay, and is there any required water retention or detention in either of these areas?
Yeah, we will be detaining some water in both projects. We'll be following, there's federal, state, local ordinances on stormwater management, so we have to follow the modeling. So that's something that Structure Point's been working on with city engineer. So in these urban settings, it's typically some sort of structure. It's not usually, big open pond. It's probably going to be some sort of vault system underneath parking areas.
There
Okay.
also, Linda, is a pond being built north of 32 as part of water retention that will affect in a positive manner going through downtown so they can regulate the flow, in addition to what was done with the Midland Trail and the, I'll call it the dam that they have there set up for that water retention
Yeah,
area
I
to
know.
the south
Yeah.
of the Midland Trail.
So where will that be on north of 32, the pond you're
That's going to be
talking about?
over west of Portillo's.
Oh, okay,
Because
yeah.
that whole
was gonna
drainage
say, it's not
system, the
downtown,
whole
is it?
drainage system goes
Right,
past
goes out
public
there.
safety and
Yes.
so on,
Yeah,
If there's
that
any
creek-
correction to that, Todd, jump in, but,
It's a regional application there, so it's only Wheeler Landing property.
Yeah.
Else kind of meter and minor home.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So
Okay.
the costs and all, you've really looked at and considered the underground detention and everything?
Yeah, underground detention is, typical for urbanizing redevelopment.
Yes.
So that's something we always plan for. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah, that's something we're prepared for. Now, we knew that the Cherry Street Bridge would be a future public works project by the city of Westfield, so that's why when we, had started this conversation, we were in full disclosure with city leadership that that's not something we'd be prepared to budget, and that's why it subsequently made it into the term sheet for the project that the
Okay.
council saw.
And I know early in 2019, at a public meeting, you were talking about, the drainage issues would be covered by the city. I specifically asked that question. So are we looking at that to be covered by the city? Or are we looking that as part of your developer agreement or your
Sure.
bonding that some has already been approved, 6 million back in 2019?
The project agreement allows for, there's kind of a hierarchy of how funds would get spent in the TIF proceeds that would be available. First, they would go to the parking structure, and then any excess funds would go to the drain encapsulation. And so I think there's been a general discussion with council members and administration that, and my position is that that legal drain that runs through the Union Square site is really, a public use. And so our ability to develop the site depends on encapsulating it. So our goal is to have the TIF proceeds pay for that. But if there are excess funds needed, so let's say the garage takes every dollar of the available proceeds and there's a delta, I'm looking at it today and say, I would love for the city to find a way to pay for that.
I'm sure.
But if not, we're charged with trying to figure out how to put it into our development budget, and that's what we're planning to do.
Okay, so right now you have an approved bond back from 2019 for the 6 million, and there's nothing we're talking about specifically tonight, but we expect something more to be coming?
No, you should expect more. The goal of this expanded allocation area was to create more available TIF proceeds to fund a parking structure. So I think it's likely that we'll be back asking for funds to build a public parking garage to the tune of, the $10.5 million range.
In addition to the 6 million?
No, in lieu of the $6 million.
In lieu of?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, in place of,
Yes.
okay, all right. Well, I had read this document that we had with our papers today below the public hearing, but that's what I was trying to clearly understand what was being stated in there.
Our goal, and I mean, this is, I know we're using the term public-private partnership, but our goal in working with the city administration was to find a creative way to create enough new assessed value to build publicly available parking without hitting the general tax rolls, without having to go find another way to monetize the resources to build the garage. And so if we're all successful in this, and this is a work in progress, I mean, it's something we're taking on a lot of risk on our end to prove our point here, that through all this expanded allocation area and the original allocation area, we've shared that data with ODB Crone, and through their modeling, they've shown that it generates not just enough excess TIF increment to cover the debt service payments on a garage.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you not encapsulating that creek on the other side. But in line with that and the Grand Junction plan, how do we get from the inside the Grand Junction Plaza to the trail that exists on the north side of 32 that goes on up by Asa Bales Park? Because, you know, normally that would just go right through your project. Are we accounting for that?
No.
No,
I
so-
really think that's, you know, that's out above my pay grade. That's definitely city administration in partnership with NDOT to figure that out.
Okay.
I don't feel like that's relevant to our project. We have been willing to look at solutions. We've talked about, you know, structures to go over the road, under the roads, probably not feasible because of flood elevations. It probably wouldn't, any sort of tunnel would probably flood. And we've provided the city with some data that we found from other market studies that suggests that people don't tend to use elevated crossings. And so that's really something that NDOT and city will have to partner on solving for.
Well, I appreciate all this information on the development, and yes, we need to develop downtown, but we built that Grand Junction Plaza saying it was the convergence of trails. And we had all these trails drawn, but I think we still have an issue of how getting through your development to continue that trail to the north, south.
If you look at how we laid out the site plan, we've, over the future encapsulated drain, we've laid out a public pedestrian plaza that travels through the site. We obviously can't develop on top of that legal drain.
Right.
And I think we'll have in total probably, don't hold me to this number, but around 50, 60 feet of total right-of-way needed. And so that's all planned as a hardscaped public plaza. So it will be one big trail, and so we'll have a delineated path through there.
Okay.
We did, early in our study, look at keeping that an open drain, and we found that the elevations just don't work. It would have been basically a 20-foot drop from our finished grade down to the surface of the water level.
Water.
It would have been an odd experience,
Yeah.
and so we decided to pursue the encapsulation route.
So you're gonna level that all up, okay? And then I just ask that you make sure when you get to your project that we don't have cars running into people across
Yeah.
that way. That's a real issue. Okay.
Understood.
Okay.
Thank you
Okay.
so much.
You got it
Nope,
covered?
I think that was,
Okay, any other questions, comments from commission members? Okay, thank you very much, Justin, I appreciate that. I'm gonna call for Catherine to come back up, if she would, and cover Resolution 03-2021 and get into some details there.
Yes. So now that you have held the public hearing on the proposed project, it is now your chore under the Indiana Code to take final action determining the public utility and benefit of the Union Square project. So Old Town's, I believe, $69 million investment, and then the return of some tax increment funds to potentially fund a parking garage. And to confirm, modify, and confirm or rescind the resolution that is before you tonight, which is Resolution 03-2021. Pretty much standard language in the resolution, except for we did modify one sentence out of Resolution 01-2021, and that was to expressly state that the base assessment date is January 1, 2021 for these 4 parcels that are being made into a allocation area. Other than that, it is standard language of taking final action to confirm your actions through 01-2021.
Okay, thank you, Catherine.
Clear as mud?
Okay, any questions, comments from commission members? Regards to 03-2021. If not, I'll look for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Doug Holtz. Do I have a motion for second? Joe Plankus, I'll second it. Okay, so we have motion and a second. We'll take roll call. All in favor signify by saying aye. Linda?
Aye.
Bob Beaudry? Jill Doyle?
Aye.
Doug Holtz? Aye. Joe Plankus? Aye. Motion passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Now we're going to turn it over to William for an introduction to his Grand Park 2022 budget.
Good evening, Commission members. For the record, William Knox, Director of Grand Park Sports Campus. Tonight, I'm here to introduce the 2022 Grand Park budget. I have with me this evening two of the staff members that kind of help me oversee the overall operation of the campus. We kind of have two departments within the department. One is more administrative and one is more operational. Jesse Stass helps me with a lot of the administrative functions related to our operation. And Matt Trinian, about 4 months ago, took over all of the operational management of the campus. So day-to-day, working with our part-time staff, our production team, and all those individuals to help make sure all the events we have on site are executed at a very high level. So I've had those two join me today. I'm not expected to have them come up and speak, but I just wanted them to be in the room when we kind of talk through this 22 budget. For several of you I've already talked to about the budget from a broad perspective. All of you have access to OpenGov to kind of go through it from a line-by-line basis. So if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer those this evening. I put on the screen, this is the format we're sharing. Other departments within the city are sharing budgets with the council. So we kept this format knowing that you had access to see it a little more live when you're in OpenGov. But the 2021 budget, you can see those are the budget numbers for 21. Again, you can see the asterisk at the bottom. We put this 21 budget together in the midst of COVID, so we did have some precautions we put in place as a result, just not knowing what was going to happen. And because we start the budget process fairly early, we really were just kind of not literally throwing darts at a dartboard, but trying to make some really educated guesses related to 21. To date, we've collected $3.45 million in revenue for 2021. So we've got a budget of 4.2. We've collected 3.45. The vast majority of our revenue, depending on how we structure a lot of the agreements, come in the second and third quarter. So I fully expect us to have a good view of where we'll end the year at the end of this quarter. To also provide some history, because when you look at 21 in comparison to 22, and you would probably say, William, you're quite ambitious here looking at 22. Because the 2021 budget was kind of a COVID-inspired budget, we looked back to 2019, and we realized $4.96 million in revenue in 2019 with expenses of about 3.5. So as we look at the 22 budget, you can see at the bottom some of the overview. We're continuing to insource some of the operation. Because of COVID, we had to take on a lot of responsibilities related to the grounds. We're going to continue to do that as we move forward. It's just proven to be more cost-effective and more efficient for us as well. We've transitioned a lot of our maintenance costs to reflect kind of real numbers where we are today. I think I shared with you guys last meeting that we're going to be working with the Treasurer's Office to add some lines to the budget such that we can reflect revenues and expenses as they actually are brought in. And we've done that, and we've included that into the OpenGov budget, so those new revenue lines are in there, as well as a few new expense lines. There are also a few other budget lines that we were able to decrease because of the efficiency of the operation or just shifting some of the expenses to other areas. But we've got what we will find over the next few months is what will really transition us to finalizing this budget. As you're probably very aware, this Delta variant is starting to become more and more of an issue for a lot of industries. It's going to affect us very similarly. So we're keeping an eye on it. We're starting to see some softening in bookings related to contracted revenue. But again, as I shared earlier, a lot of our revenue typically comes into this third quarter. So I believe the timeline to get this approved officially is November, somewhere in November.
For the final budget?
For the final, yes. So we will probably continue to fine tune this such that we can have a very accurate, as accurate of budget as we can, as we kind of continue to understand bookings for the rest of this year through. That will impact 2022. So with that, I will pause. I know some of you have had an opportunity to go into OpenGov and take a look at the budget. I've spoken to some of you about the budget in person, but I will pause there and answer any questions related to 22 budget or anything related to this year.
Okay, questions for William? Anything?
Quick question, William. You're making an increased investment in flooring equipment, expanded meeting space. Is that an indication that perhaps not the scope of Grant Park, but the reach in regards to conventions or other large meetings or other gatherings?
Yep.
Is that
That's a direct result of some of our current bookings that are requesting additional space and some of the bookings we've had to pass on because we didn't have that space available. So when we look at events like Gaylor, who we've booked again for 22, they'll use every inch of meeting space we have. Suburban Indy, the show that we've had on site for the last 4 years, is now expanded to the point where they've used all of our existing flooring and have opportunities to expand their show if we had available flooring. So looking at those opportunities, as well as with us expanding capacity, access to the building by adding a larger garage door on the north side of the building for the Farming Technology Show that we're hosting, we're starting to see a lot of opportunities to expand the flooring, the footprint for flooring to another, at least half fill for now. If not by 23, I think we'll need another full fill.
How long do you think it takes to recoup that based on?
Great question. So our additional investment in the flooring, back in 2016, we're probably about 40% there to recouping the full cost for that floor. The floor has a 20-year lifespan, and because of our use, we only use it indoors. That's 20 years, mostly outdoor concert venues. So I fully anticipate us getting at least 25, almost 30 years out of the flooring. So the plan based off of the current shows, we will have the initial investment of the flooring covered in the next 2 years.
Okay.
Okay, now, as I remember, William, looking at the net operating revenue, when you get finished with 2022, your reserve funds will be around $5.5 million, is that
So
correct?
currently, I think as of this morning, we've got 4.7 million in the bank. The
Okay.
plan, provided everything goes the way we would like for the rest of this year, will end just with about 5 million in the bank is where we're trying to aim for.
Okay, and then at the end of 22, obviously, you'll
Correct,
be
if
adding
we
that
could,
to
yeah.
5 million.
Yep.
Well, I have to compliment your staff for doing a great job on managing something that was originally planned to break even, and you're certainly making a pretty healthy profit, net operating revenue, whatever you
Yeah.
want to entitle
Yeah.
it. That's a credit to you and your staff for
Yeah.
what you
And
guys
to that
have
point,
done. We really appreciate that effort on part of the taxpayers, that's for sure.
Yeah. And we've actively had some discussions. I think during our last meeting, I also talked to you guys about the capital replacement budget that we're working on and kind of timelining that out. I was meeting with the staff a few weeks ago about it, and we originally thought we would get to a point where when we started looking at replacement, we'd do 1 or 2 fields a year. By the time we extrapolated that out to all 10 fields, we would have some fields that would be probably far beyond their life cycle. So we're kind of modeling now where we're going to take them in groups of 4 for replacement. We're still probably 3-4 years away from having to do the first field, given their current condition. So if we're able to stay on track with the revenues, I think we'll be well in line to get those replaced in kind of buckets of 4 and start to rotate those through. And that's one of the bigger, other than we're going to make a significant investment this year in crack sealing for the asphalt and the parking lots. That is going to be another big thing. I think other than fields and asphalt, because of recent insurance claims. We're able to replace all the roofs on concession stands and all those buildings, so I think we're in pretty good shape from that standpoint. The building, as you can see, we've increased our MRO budget because, you know, we're 7 years old, things are starting to break down, HVAC units, all that stuff, you know, will need care, so we want to make sure we have funds allotted for that.
Okay, as we discussed, William, what I'd like to do is have a vote on your budget at the September meeting. So I would encourage the commission members to please go to OpenGov, look at the individual line items. If you have questions, please send out emails to me and William for any of those questions you might have. I don't want to tie up next month's meeting because we're going to have a lot of other things that are coming up. So let's use this time in between via email to get any questions answered that you may have on the individual numbers, and then utilize the meeting for the actual vote to
And I know I shared with some of you, I know Linda and I met, when you look at the OpenGov budget, when you look at the increase, just be very careful and remember that those numbers that are compared to 21 are the COVID kind of budget. So those numbers were a lot lower in comparison. So when you see something's up 58%, it's 58% based off of a lower number to start with than 21. So that's
Good,
all.
good point, William, good point.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Just out of curiosity, like with all the, I mean, eventually you're gonna need to start replacing stuff, like, what is the goal or the need as far as a reserve fund? I mean, do you have a balance that you guys wanna maintain?
So I'm working with John on that. You know, given that we've got essentially $4.7 million sitting, you know, starting to peel off some of that into a separate capital replacement account, and then also come up with a number annually that we will use as a set aside for that account. So let's call it, we pull $4 million into the capital replacement account, keep $700,000 in for operating cash flow. You know, we call it $500,000 a year we pull into that account. We're modeling now to see if that will sustain us with what we need to do from a turf standpoint as well as the other infrastructure. So there, you know, I think what we would look to do is utilize that, what our current operating revenues as that capital and replacement budget.
Couple questions. When we talked, we looked at the increases in electricity, water, sewer, insurance, heat, and all those things.
Yep.
Are we, you mentioned your rate cards, are we passing along those increases?
Yep. So
your
as
rate
we look at
cards?
some of those increases related to electrical costs and certain things like that, we are
Right.
looking at the rate card. Our current rate card is good through the 2022 season. So as we
Okay.
start to contract new events beyond 22, the new rate card will be reflected for those. And that'll come up when we do our fee schedule at the end of the year for approval.
And you're already scheduling some of those?
Yep.
On the outdoor staff, and you adding these two new positions so then we'll have no companies that we're working with for any of those things, for grounds or maintenance or janitorial? Because I know in talking to Ken Coker with Bullpen,
Yep.
one of their problems was having people there at the hours they needed
Absolutely.
them.
Yep.
So are we gonna be able, in the rest of the park, to have people there the hours that we need them?
Absolutely. And that's why we're fully insourcing it such that we don't
Insourcing.
have those problems. Yes.
Okay, and then I think when you and I talked, we talked about the LST,
Yep.
okay? Are we bringing that in-house?
So the plan is to bring that scope in-house. Right now, I still have it modeled as those individuals being contract because
Okay, that's what I thought.
because of a few, you know, other elements that we're navigating. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
best current day. Those individuals, you know, have been with the park since 2016. They understand the production and the booking side. For us to bring them onto our payroll, we would pay more than what we're paying through the contract. So
Mm-hmm.
right now, I think in this stabilizing year, we're gonna maintain that agreement for 22 and
Okay.
reevaluate for 23.
Well, I was gonna ask you that, because when we bring them as employees, it's not just the salary, but it's
Correct.
about another
Absolutely.
.55
Yep.
of that to pay all their benefits.
Yes.
So you did look at that?
Yes.
Yeah, I think we touched on that when I was with you. So I see a lot of larger expenses on maintenance and, you know, doing different things, and so a lot of these we're calling maintenance per se, where we see some of these large increases. And I think John mentioned last month that there was a pro forma, or maybe you told me you were working on a pro forma for out in the future.
For the capital replacement. So
Yes.
anything out of the operating budget is what is maintenance. So if
Yes.
an AC unit goes out, that's covered under operations, not capital,
Okay.
unless it's one of our big chillers for the event center where it's $200,000 to replace. Then obviously we would want to draw that from the capital replacement fund. All of the maintenance, the MRO items are nets that we're replacing on fields, AC units on the concession stands, those type of equipment, repair and maintenance items for either physical assets of fields and/or event center or concession stands.
Okay. Large decrease in reimbursable electricity costs from Diamond Lights. You're going down 100 grand?
Yeah, and I think that that one, I think when we talked, that number was not put in the system correctly. So that's
Okay.
where the reimbursable expense was not accounted for appropriately in that year.
Okay. Now, are we going to have a way that the public can see some of this detail? Because when William and I talked, we talked about maybe having a presentation or something, because it's good to see and to know, and
Yeah, and I know
See
that
what's
the
happening.
plan is for me to present with the other departments during the open session with council. So I think that'll be
Okay.
another opportunity for the public to see
Great.
this as well.
Okay, good. Thank you, Linda.
Mhm.
Any other questions for William on the budget?
Any questions, just let me know.
Okay,
Thank you.
I think we're good. Okay, again, please use email. Copy all commission members in addition to William and I, and let's try to get all those questions answered prior to the meeting in September, because we're going to have some other things we'll be working on then, too. John, additional business before the commission?
Yeah, I do have a housekeeping item. In some past action, the RDC authorized William to execute routine agreements. This maximized our optimal efficiencies and revenues, and it enabled us to be nimble and be responsive to demands for the campus services. Unfortunately, this efficiency has been construed by some to be secretive, unfairly painting Grand Park in a negative way. So we've reached out to TAF, and starting next month, staff intends to institute a new process for Grand Park contract approval. The intent is to provide a couple of packets on a monthly basis for ratification, review, and first packet would be for review and ratification, anything that's already happened, and so that you are aware of it and ratifying it. The second portion would be for you to look at and authorize if it hasn't already been authorized. We'll do that in a, what did you call it? It was
The consent agenda.
a consent agenda, thank you. And so we'll use that mechanism going forward. Right now, the plan is to develop those on the first Friday of every month, so then we can get them out the door so that you can review them. William, basically, on a monthly basis, what are we looking at for a number of agreements? What do you think? You're probably, on average, how many in a month are you going through?
Well, that depends on what quarter we're in, but on average, we're probably 15 to 20 somewhere, user agreements, and then there's other agreements that would accompany those, whether it's sponsorship or
Okay.
event operator agreements.
Okay. So the packets could be large. And just, I want you to be aware of that. The last thing we want to do is slow down the ability of us to get new revenue. That's our direction at this point, Joe.
Okay. Well,
We
that
are
follows our
planning
discussions
on,
we've had, John, sure.
Yep, we are planning on, again, starting that first Friday
Okay,
of next
good.
month.
Making progress, that's excellent. Okay, any other additional business?
I don't have any at this time.
Okay, Cam, anything for the good of the order here?
Not for me, thank you.
Okay. Do I have a motion for adjournment? Doug Holtz, second.
I'll second.
Bob Beaudry. Everyone in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Meeting's adjourned. 6:44.